Hi, I'm Andrew McLaren, and I want to help you with the NGSS, specifically how to plan out a unit and how to find resources for a standard. And I'm going to be focusing mostly on middle school because that's what I've taught and have looked at these things. But what I'm going over will really help out high school and elementary school teachers, um, especially the part where I'm talking about how to find free and vetted sources. That'll help everyone out. Trying to figure out what your standards are is kind of harder for high school and middle school because it's just kind of left up to the states to do that, and a little bit harder to find what is like seventh grade standards, right? So I'm going to help you understand why it's really important to spend some time looking at this stuff, and then helping you understand how to find these standards. They're called performance expectations, what most people think of as standards with NGSS. And then we're going to talk about the how you would go about brainstorming and planning out a couple weeks, and how to actually find some resources for planning out a unit or even the whole year. Now, the main reason you really want to deep dive the NGSS is that you get more clarity for the students and you see more growth. So they understand what the assessment really is working towards if you have assignments that are designed to support those practices. Now, for example, I had this curriculum escalar totally not aligned. They said it was, and they even had some ways to kind of justify it, but they oftentimes did not include the like the practices. So like this conduct an investigation, that's critical. Like if you look at this is the evidence statements down here on the bottom. They Kids can't just tell me what like a cell is. They need to be able to identify the presence or absence of cells in living and non-living things, right? There's like maybe will be like, that's a cell, that's not a cell. And there's a couple things in here that I didn't cover in this particular assessment, but I looked at there to help me get an idea of what students should be able to do. Um, like they need to be able to collect some of these data and do some observations. Like I can't do that for them. They need to be able to collect that data. That's part of the assessment. It's not just tell me what a cell is. It's collect the information from these images, come to the conclusion that those are cells, and then be able to put that all together. So that's kind of the reason why it's super important to look at the NGSS, is that you can see like if you were to traditionally just give kids images of cells, um, it kind of takes away from the whole purpose of looking at the images of the microscopes, because that is the investigation that helps them understand where cells come from, right? So it helps them do better on the assessment, and it helps you design a better assessment if you have that practice included in the assignment as well as the final test, right? So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to do like a brief overview of a performance expectation and its structure, and then help you find it. So basically, for like a standard, there's three parts. There's the practice. There's this concept that kind of goes across multiple subject areas. It's like really big ideas. And then there's disciplinary core ideas, so something specific to that subject area. So each one of the NGSS concepts has those three components that you really do need to include in your instruction and your assessments, because we want to make sure that we are measuring students' abilities to do labs, to be able to model, to be able to do research, right? There's things like that that you want to include in your assessments, as well as the classwork. And so if you're looking and you're trying to find a performance expectation, you might be like, I know it's this, but I don't like it's around cells, but I don't know exactly what it is. I don't have my MSLS1 memorized. I don't know what that is. There's the NGSS website. They've got a really nice search tool on here. So if you just search nextgeneration.org or NGSS standards, this comes up, and they've got a quick search tool as well as an advanced search. And both of these are very powerful, very cool. But you can do something like this and be like, oh, I need things with cells in it, right? And I want to know what my standards are around cells. So you can look at that and then click on this, And hey, look, the SCP, DCI, and CCC, right? um, they have those parts kind of labeled in here as well if you hover over the words. So we've got our performance expectation. You can find it using that search tool. And I'll show this a little bit more in depth in a little bit, but I really like evidence statements off to the side. It's a PDF, and it gives you this list of stuff that students need to be able to do. This is, to me, like the standard. This is a measurable thing that helps me think of like, oh yeah, I know what lesson I can do to support that, right? So I really like getting my evidence statements, which are, again, just off to the side for a particular standard, like MSLS 1-1 or 1-2 or something like that. Also, I wanted to point out, I kind of included it on here. These are all LS1, but one's at the elementary level, which is they give grade levels. Middle school, they do not give grade levels. It's just like cover this in middle school. Like different states will cover LS1-1 at like different grade levels. And same with high school. Like these standards can be taught at any grade level in any class. Teachers just gotta figure it out, right? It's also kind of interesting to note that these are very similar. Like LS1, this is all around the same sort of concepts as this, which is all around the same sort of concepts as this. It's just the high school is deeper and the middle school is deeper. And then this is like the most shallow of the understanding that students will get from the material, right? So that's kind of how they're structured. NGSS website tool is really nice. There is also something I wanted to show you, Appendix K. This is my favorite appendix. Appendix, yeah. So basically, the one that California has adopted, and the one that Oregon and Washington and a whole lot of states have adopted is Table 3A. It's right here. Yeah. So like this is like 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. Like course 1, 2, and 3 are different grade levels basically. And so you can see like, oh, you should have LS1-1 right here, right? So you should be teaching that in 6th grade. And it looks like they do want it taught, not LS1, but there's different, or not LS1-1, but LS1-6 and 1-7 are like at 7th grade, right? So they've designated, yeah, this is all kind of related, but we're going to teach that part in 7th grade. And there's a lot of logic behind why they put them in this particular order. They didn't just integrate them randomly. There's a lot of logic as to like what are going to be pre-existing things that they're going to need to understand and what will they be able to add on to from that. So there's a lot of thought that went into putting them in this sequence. And most states, they have like a website that gives you what's at what state. But the Appendix K, that's kind of where this all originated from, with different states doing different orders. There's certain ones that do like subject area, like life science, earth science, so on and so forth. And other ones like a little bit of everything at 6, a little bit of everything at 7th and 8th, right? As you can imagine, most states have determined that that appendix is not enough for teachers. So a lot of states will do things like, this is what California's got, where they've got the standards, right, for the 6th grade. So they'll tell you like, oh, you're covering this at 6th grade. But then it's not like a nice little list of the standards. It's got like the SCP and DCIs kind of in there. So that's something that California's provided, and like all kinds of states, they all do this a little bit differently in terms of telling you what are going to be responsible for at like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. But you can kind of see that that's the structure of what they've got going on there. And they've got that for the 3 different grade levels to help districts figure out what they're going to teach when. But most districts will have something, some sort of list of your standards or something like that. So you can see this is, I think this was Portland. Yeah. So they've got like their different units and topics and all that, and they've got them organized by 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and put into a sequence. So you can kind of see the standards and where they're kind of coming from. But the main thing that I'm looking at is right here. These are the performance expectations that we were just looking at. And as you can see, like 6th grade, I think it's got 23 or so. Yeah. And like this one's, it's got a lot more. This also was this district kind of did some crazy things with some of the standards and doubling them up sometimes. Um, this was another district that I worked at. I think this was Springfield, and you can kind of see how they've listed out the standards. This was 6th grade's map, and so we had different domains, and we listed out the standards and some activities that might help out and things that were in the district that we're working on, right? So I know it's like, okay, that doesn't really seem like that helps all that much, right? Um, I get that. It's kind of confusing. I honestly just made a list myself and kept that as a separate doc because all these different things are like, okay, this is too much, right? So I would highly recommend that you have your own doc with like your performance expectations in it. It helps a lot. So let's say you've got your list of performance expectations. There's probably about 20 to 30. If you've got 40 weeks, it's about 1 to 2 weeks per performance expectation. That gives you a good idea of like how many activities you're going to be able to do. Um, and so what I did was I would create like a unit, like this chemistry unit, and I would just start brainstorming. This is kind of a later version of it. I don't think I'm going to be able to show you version history because I think this is a copy of it. Actually, yeah, it looks like I can show you some of the older versions. Cool. So you can see like, okay, I just like listed out my standards. I was like, okay, I know this is what I need to cover for chemistry, right? And then I wrote down some more ideas, a little bit more ideas, got rid of some stuff that I didn't like, so on and so forth. And it started to kind of make a little bit more sense as to what I was going to do to cover different standards. Actually worked out really nicely. And then you can kind of see like I do a similar thing for the week where it's like, okay, here's roughly different days, some activities I could do on those different days, right? And so I would give myself just a space to brainstorm. You could do this on a Jamboard if you don't like writing on like lined things like this. Um, Again, this was for my own eyes, so I was kind of giving this a little bit more freedom, saying just like write stuff down, see what you write down, see what you like, and make sure that they're organized. So like each one of these things was like in the Google folder. Like I had a whole folder for the whole school year, and then I had a folder for each unit, and I had a folder for each week, and there was some sort of document um, in there giving me some space to brainstorm. So I would just write down whatever came to mind. Like when I was looking at those performance, um, or sorry, the evidence statements. So if you're looking at an NGSS standard on their website, they do have the evidence statements like over here. And I would go down there and I'd be like, okay, well, how can I get, I need to make sure that I get them some data about plants needing water, right? Or, okay, there's something with plants needing light. So I'm gonna know that there's something where there's gonna be some lab that they're doing. So I might start brainstorming and typing out some ideas on how I might do that, right? So I just get ideas from these evidence statements, jot them down, put them in that doc, and then think about it and try and think of alternative ways to do that. Now, I really, really liked doing this in Google Docs because I was able to just go back and add in any of my thoughts later, and it worked pretty nicely. I'd also recommend that you go to the NSTA and look at what they've got for any of these things. So if you go to like NSTA NGSS +1-1, it's very similar. The NSTA, this is the National Science Teachers Association. It looks very similar to the actual NGSS website. But if you look in the lower right-hand corner right here, it's got NSTA vetted resources. And these are really, really cool. They're not fully aligned a lot of the times, but they have good things that approach the performance expectation. And so they'll give you some notes on the lesson, and then you can actually view it. Now, a lot of these things are like books that you have to like pay for like this, but that's not always the case. There's plenty of things that are on here for free. Um, I should have probably got one of those ready beforehand, but I would encourage you to check out the vetted resources. The shared community resources, don't trust those. Those are probably not aligned, but they're worth looking at, and comparing to your evidence statements. So make sure that you've got those evidence statements while you're looking at the individual assignment and seeing, is what students doing here actually related to like the practice conducting the investigation, right? So this is like a lab, so that makes me think that this probably does actually get close to this practice. So that's kind of the general idea of, okay, well, check out the NSTA, look at their resources. They're really, really good. Um, but also be careful and actually read the evidence statements. I Google this stuff and I check out like teachers pay teachers. So I know that teachers pay teachers lets you actually label things. Like you can um, now actually label in there. This is pretty new, by the way. They didn't do this with NGSS for a long time, but you can label these things with the standard. And so, um, in theory, this should be aligned to that. Now, if you actually look at a lot of these things, they're not actually aligned. It's just based off of teachers saying, "Oh, this is like in that subject area," and most of the time these are not aligned. And also keep in mind that they might have it in their title and not in their labels. So I would just Google it or search it like that. In Teachers Pay Teachers, you can search like in their search bar right here, right? It's the same thing. Um, I would highly recommend that you check out Vet Simulations. They've got one for like everything. Like seriously. I love this website, and it's open source, and or like I don't know if it's open source, but it's like free use. Like anybody can use these for free. It's a really good um, website for Sims. I also really like Concordia. Um, these guys have a really good resources that the models really are closely aligned to the NGSS from what I've seen. They do a really good job of getting these different simulations on here. Like the Tectonic Explorer, you can see that on my channel. It's another one of my popular videos. So we've got teachers pay teachers, and just kind of put all those ideas into some doc. Um, and then at the end, I would also try and do a little audit and be like, did I actually cover this part of the standard? So this was an attempt at me or by me to try and see, did I cover all these different parts? Did I cover like one, two, three of these different standards? And how good of a job did I do? So I was just kind of trying to line them up for myself to reflect on that a little bit. And then do that for the other performance expectations. So you build up some activities for your different ones. You figure out, okay, I've got about a week for each one, and you try and plan out a week or so for them, and try and get them in a logical sequence. Like I was looking at my chemistry unit that was given to me, and I cut whole parts that were like going into the high school realm because they were talking about like subatomic particles, like electrons and protons. Don't do that in middle school. That's high school. um, so there's some stuff I had to cut out and some stuff that I had to move around a little bit, and include like a research project that wasn't in there at all. Um, you can see that there's some issues when people forget to include some of those practices. The biggest one is that there's never a research project in science. I swear, like every school I go to, they just don't include that, although it is critical that students are able to get information from databases. I mean, scientists do that all the time, right? Also, yeah, don't spend too much time on one of these. They can overlap. If you're getting one that's over 2 weeks, you should be trying to teach another performance expectation concurrently. Um, and then you can build that assessment based off of those statements, which are the same things that you built the lessons off of. And so they should support each other directly. And then you're not doing any extra work for things that you don't assess on. Okay. So I actually already talked about this in the previous bit, so I'm not going to make it its own segment in the video. Um, Check out the NSTA. Very, very good resources on there. You can navigate on their website as well as just Googling it. I would just Google it. It's easier for me. Thank you for McLearning with me. I've got a few more offers that I'd like to let you know about. And remember, like and subscribe. For each video on YouTube, I am making an interactive version using HP5. These will be for sale on Podia. And if you click on the link in the video, you should be able to go directly to that product. I also have 2 demos I'm going to be linking so you can kind of see what these products look like. So I would recommend checking out those demos. I also offer one-on-one remote tutoring through Wyzant. Please use the links that I have linked below. That way I can get 100% of the hourly rate as opposed to 75. Each video also has a link for my Patreon, and you can join at the $3 level to get some resources I use for tutoring or to support the channel. And I also have a $5 raffle level, which you could either get some free online tutoring or 5 interactive lessons for free. You choose which ones. And then I also have my Teachers Pay Teachers, which has some old lessons that I made from when I used to be a teacher. I may be adding to that. Thank you for spending your time with me. I hope that you learned something.